Hey, how's it going? So I'm going to talk about this is class 5, writing with power, part 4. So this is covering 177 to 237. It's a section on audience. So this will just take a couple minutes. I think this is important for people that are worried about who they're writing for, and you know it's the chapters, like a lot in this book. I think it has a lot of it's saying the same thing in a lot of different ways sometimes, but the main idea is really interesting. The essential transaction seems to be with oneself and speaking to one's best self. So that's the nice thing about writing. But people are always worried about who they're writing to. And then he has a section on the effects of other people in our words. Sometimes people make it harder to put words out if we know who we're writing for. He says, but sometimes, like when we're speaking, if we know, if we're with a group of people, and all of a sudden we're talking to them. This is talking, not writing. We're talking to them. We find more words, and we're more eloquent than usual. So that's an interesting part there. So he separates the dangerous audience from a safe audience, and you want to seek a safe audience, even though that's not always possible. Sometimes when an audience is safe, you put words out more easily. Yes, yes. So he wants you to improve the situation by changing your audience for your early writing. So maybe if you're writing for a dangerous crowd, you want to find somebody where you can write a draft to that's not a dangerous crowd, and make that draft for them. And then from that, you adapt the final copy to the dangerous audience. So audience is a focusing force. Same summary advice. Beware. This is interesting. Be aware. The common advice has blocked so many people over the years that you must always keep in mind your audience. Now he says that's not always the case, because if it's a dangerous audience, that could affect your writing. So he doesn't necessarily agree with that. The idea in persuasion is interesting. And he says here, it's good to get feedback from your opponents. How much do you have stake in the issue here? If you get feedback from your opponents, depending on how much that particular piece of writing's for, that could really help you improve what you're writing. So get accurate feedback, especially from the enemy. Page 206. That's interesting. And that's how are you going to get necessarily accurate feedback from the enemy? Well, maybe if there's somebody that's related to them or something that's similar, or you can find someone in the dangerous crowd that you're not necessarily writing to per se. Compulsory writing here. It starts in school and continues on the job. So you guys are in school and you're writing all these reflections. Once you get out, you're doing the same thing. Well, depending on what type of job you have. If angry, resentful feelings hold back your writing, stop, recognize those feelings for what they are, scream them out or write them down for 10 minutes, and then get back to your job. That's interesting, the whole idea of venting. So it's he says here, there's some nice advice here on page 214 to 215 for people that want to write for creative writing, or writing for a magazine, or getting recognized, or publishing a paper. Don't wait for an invitation. But things also work out when you get invitations. Make use of the experts to try to expand your audience. Look for writing situations that are halfway between invited and uninvited. For example, write letters to newspapers. Those are for people that want to become aspiring writers. When you're writing for teachers, as you probably are in this case, or your students are for you, which is interesting, it's good to think about these things. Advice for anybody. Are you still writing like a nervous student? Are you still 20 years later writing like that angry student? Or are you writing like that star student, working harder to impress the teacher, So there's some suggestions for students here on page 228. And they're pretty cool, Work out some alternative writing assignments with your teacher. Ask teachers to specify clearly the audience and purpose for any writing assignment they give. Involve asking for more and clearer feedback from your teacher usually gives. Ask your teachers to point out at least one thing you did well in each paper, if possible, consecutively. So that's some good chapters in here, some good things that are said. I particularly like the section on an audience, writing for a dangerous or a safe audience. And that really does impede, giving presentations, writing papers, speaking in general. Obviously, depending on your personality, has a lot to do with it, but there's some good points in there.